K9 breaks into child's birthday party. What he found in the gift bags stunned the parents. What happened next will shock you to your core. A simple birthday party turned into something nobody could have imagined. Before we begin, let us know in the comments where you're listening from, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more incredible true stories. The story you're about to listen to started on what seemed like the most perfect Saturday afternoon of the year. It was 3:30 p.m. when the sun hung bright and warm over the Garcia family's backyard. Yellow balloons bobbed gently in the afternoon breeze, their strings tied to every fence post and chair back. Red and pink streamers fluttered from the old oak tree that had watched over 3 generations of birthday parties in this very yard. The smell of fresh-cut grass mixed with the sweet scent of vanilla frosting that still lingered on Maria Garcia's apron. Children's laughter filled the air like music. 7 little bodies raced around the yard, playing an intense game of tag, their shoes pounding against the soft earth, leaving tiny footprints in the flower beds that Maria would discover later and smile about. Parents sat scattered across folding chairs, plastic cups of ice-cold lemonade sweating in their hands, watching their kids with that relaxed satisfaction that only comes on perfect weekend afternoons. But this wasn't just any Saturday. This was the day that would change everything. Luna Garcia stood in the center of it all, her 5-year-old frame practically glowing with joy. She wore a shimmering purple princess dress that her grandmother had sewn by hand, complete with tiny silver stars that caught the sunlight every time she twirled. Her dark curls were pulled back with a sparkly tiara that kept slipping down over her eyes, making her giggle each time she pushed it back up. Her cheeks were flushed pink from running, and her smile was so wide it seemed to take up her entire face. "Mama, when do we cut the cake?" Luna called out, bouncing on her toes near the gift table that groaned under the weight of colorfully wrapped presents. Each box and bag seemed to promise another adventure, another treasure to unwrap and discover. Maria wiped her hands on her apron and smiled at her daughter. "Soon, mija, Uncle Rico is bringing Max any minute now." As if summoned by her words, the back gate creaked open. Rico Valdez stepped through, his weathered hands gripping a thick leather leash. Behind him trotted a massive German shepherd, his black and tan coat gleaming in the afternoon sun. The dog moved with the careful dignity of an old soldier, his steps measured and purposeful. "Max is here!" Luna shrieked with delight, abandoning her friends mid-game and racing toward the gentle giant who had become the unofficial mascot of every Garcia family gathering. Max was no ordinary dog. At 8 years old, he carried himself with the quiet confidence of a warrior who had seen too much but, chosen peace. His deep brown eyes held stories that only Rico knew. Stories of late-night drug raids, of sniffing out danger in dark alleys, of saving lives with nothing but his nose and his courage. But those days were behind him now. These days, Max spent his time being the world's most patient playmate to Luna and her cousins. "Easy, Luna," Rico chuckled as his niece wrapped her small arms around Max's neck. The dog's tail wagged slowly, his massive head gently nuzzling against her cheek. "He's getting old, remember?" But Max didn't look old when he was with Luna. Something about her pure joy seemed to energize him, to remind him of simpler times when the world was just about loyalty and love, not about hunting down criminals and protecting the innocent from dangers they couldn't even imagine. The other children quickly abandoned their game of tag and swarmed around Max, their small hands reaching out to pet his soft fur. He stood perfectly still, letting them climb on his back and tug gently at his ears. His patience was legendary in the family. Rico often joked that Max had more self-control than most adults he knew. "He's so good with them," whispered Carmen Morales, Luna's godmother, as she watched the scene unfold. She held her own 3-year-old son, Diego, on her hip, and even he was reaching out toward the magnificent dog with chubby, curious fingers. "He's a natural protector," Rico replied, his voice carrying a note of pride that only a former K9 handler could understand. Even retired, he's always watching, always aware. As if to prove his point, Max lifted his head and looked around the yard, his ears perked and alert. His gaze swept over the laughing children, the relaxed adults, the table full of gifts waiting to be opened. For just a moment, his expression grew serious, professional. Then Luna giggled and buried her face in his fur, and he was just a beloved family pet again. Maria clapped her hands together. Okay, everyone, let's gather around for pictures before we start the presents. The next 20 minutes were a blur of pose shots and candid moments. Max seemed to understand exactly when the camera was pointing his way, sitting perfectly still with his tongue hanging out just enough to look charming, but not sloppy. Luna insisted he be in every single photo, wrapping her arms around his neck or resting her head against his side. These are going to be beautiful, Maria murmured to her husband Carlos as she scrolled through the digital preview on her camera. Look at this one, you can't even tell which one of them is happier. Carlos nodded, but his attention was already shifting to the practical matters of the party hosting. Should we start with the cake or the presents? Presents? Luna called out before her mother could answer. Max wants to see me open the presents, don't you, boy? Max's tail wagged as if he understood every word. The adults began organizing the gift opening ceremony with the efficiency of people who had done this many times before. Folding chairs were arranged in a rough circle around the gift table. The children sat cross-legged on a large blanket that Maria had spread on the grass. Parents positioned themselves for optimal photo opportunities. But Max seemed restless suddenly. He stood up from where he had been lying peacefully beside Luna and began to pace. His movements were subtle, almost casual, but Rico noticed immediately. After working with K-9 units for 15 years, he could read his partner's body language like a book. Everything okay, boy? Rico asked quietly, reaching down to stroke Max's head. Max looked up at him with those intelligent brown eyes, then turned his attention back to the yard. His nose was working now, testing the air with tiny, rapid sniffs. To most people, he probably just looked like a dog being a dog. But Rico felt a familiar tingle of alertness run down his spine. Maybe he smells the barbacoa from the Hernandez house next door, Carlos suggested, noticing Rico's concerned expression. You know how dogs get around food. Rico nodded, but he didn't look convinced. He had seen Max around food plenty of times. This was different. This was Max in work mode, even though he hadn't been on duty for 2 years. Luna bounced up from her spot on the blanket. Can we start now? Please, Mama. Maria looked around at the assembled group, 17 adults and 9 children, all watching her daughter with fond smiles. Okay, mija, but let's do it properly. Start with the smallest gifts and work your way up to the big ones. Luna clapped her hands together and reached for a small wrapped box near the edge of the table. As she did, Max took a step closer to the gift table, his head tilted at an angle that Rico recognized all too well. Max, Rico called softly. Come here, boy. But Max didn't come. Instead, he took another step toward the table, his nose almost touching a large gift bag decorated with cartoon unicorns. His body had gone completely still, except for his nose, which was working overtime now, drawing in air in short, sharp breaths. Luna tore the wrapping paper off her first gift, a beautiful set of colored pencils from her teacher, and held them up for everyone to see. The adults clapped and cheered appropriately, but Rico's attention was entirely focused on his dog. Max circled the gift table once, slowly, his nose never more than 6 inches from the various packages. When he completed his circuit, he sat down directly in front of the unicorn bag and stared at it with an intensity that made Rico's blood run cold. Luna, Rico called out, trying to keep his voice casual. Maybe Max should go inside for a little while. He seems a bit excited. No, Luna protested immediately. He wants to watch. Look, he's being so good. She was right. To everyone else, Max looked perfectly calm. He was sitting at attention like the well-trained police dog he had been, not moving a muscle, not making a sound. But Rico could see the tension in every line of his body. This was Max on high alert, Max who had found something that shouldn't be there. Rico, Maria called from her spot behind the camera. Is everything okay? I'm sure it's fine, Rico replied, but his hand was already moving toward his cell phone. Old habits died hard, and right now, every instinct he had developed during his years in law enforcement was screaming that something was very, very wrong. Max shifted his weight slightly, never taking his eyes off the unicorn bag. His ears were forward, his tail completely still. In the old days, this was the moment when Rico would have called for backup and started clearing the area. But this was just a little girl's birthday party in a suburban backyard. What could possibly be dangerous about a bag full of birthday presents? Luna reached for her next gift, a medium-sized box wrapped in sparkly silver paper. As she lifted it from the table, she accidentally bumped against the unicorn bag. It shifted slightly and Max's head moved to track its new position, with the precision of a radar system locked onto a target. "Whose gift is that one?" Carmen asked, nodding toward the bag that had captured Max's attention. Maria consulted the small gift tags scattered across the table. "This one says it's from Eduardo. Eduardo." She paused, a slight frown crossing her face. "I'm not sure I remember an Eduardo." Carlos looked up from where he was opening a fresh container of lemonade. "Eduardo Silva? From my office? I invited him last week when I ran into him at the grocery store. Nice guy, said he had a daughter around Luna's age, but couldn't bring her today." "Oh, right," Maria nodded, but she still looked slightly confused. "I don't think I've met him." "He seemed really excited to come," Carlos continued. "Said he loved kids' parties, brought that big bag of gifts, said he went a little overboard because he remembered how magical birthdays were when he was young." Rico felt another chill run down his spine. He looked around the yard, counting faces. "Is Eduardo here? I'd like to meet him." Carlos scanned the group of adults scattered around the yard. "You know, I haven't seen him for a while. He was here earlier, talking to some of the other parents. Maybe he went to his car for something." Luna had moved on to her third gift, but Max hadn't moved at all. If anything, his focus on the unicorn bag had intensified. Rico made a decision that he hoped he wouldn't regret. "Hey everyone," he called out, standing up from his chair. "Why don't we take a little break from the gifts? Maybe cut the cake first." "But we always do presents first," Luna protested. "I know, Mia, but maybe Max is hungry," Rico improvised. "Look how he's sitting there so patiently. I think he wants some cake too." The adults laughed at this suggestion, but Rico wasn't trying to be funny. He was trying to buy time to figure out why every instinct he had was telling him that something in that innocent-looking gift bag was going to destroy this perfect afternoon forever. Max turned his head to look at Rico, and for just a moment, their eyes met. In that look, Rico saw everything he needed to know. His partner was trying to tell him something, trying to warn him about a danger that no one else could see or smell or understand. But what could be dangerous about a birthday present from a coworker? Rico was about to find out. The decision to cut the cake first seemed like the right move, until Maria brought out Luna's masterpiece, a 3-layer vanilla cake decorated with purple roses and silver stars that matched her dress perfectly. As everyone gathered around the small folding table where the cake sat, Max remained exactly where he was, still focused on that unicorn gift bag like it contained the secrets of the universe. "Come on, Max," Luna called out, patting her leg. "Come see my beautiful cake." Any other day, Max would have trotted over immediately. He loved being part of the family's celebrations, loved the attention and the occasional dropped crumb that came his way. But today, he didn't even turn his head. His entire body remained rigid with attention, every muscle coiled and ready. Rico felt sweat beading on his forehead, despite the pleasant afternoon temperature. He had seen Max like this exactly 3 times in their 5 years working together. The first time, they had discovered 50 pounds of cocaine hidden in a shipping container. The second time, they had found a meth lab operating out of an abandoned warehouse. The third time, they had prevented a drug dealer from selling contaminated heroin to middle school kids. Each time, Max's behavior had been identical to what Rico was witnessing now. "Maybe we should wait for Eduardo to come back," suggested Mrs. Rodriguez, Luna's grandmother, as she helped Maria position the candles on the cake. "It seems rude to start without him." "Where did he go?" Rico asked, trying to sound casual. Carlos looked around the yard again, shading his eyes with his hand. "I really don't know. He was here just a little while ago, talking to—" Carlos paused, his brow furrowing. "Actually, now that I think about it, I'm not sure who he was talking to. Every time I looked over, he seemed to be standing alone." A cold finger of fear traced its way down Rico's spine. "Carlos, tell me about this Eduardo. How long have you known him?" "Well, not long, I guess. We worked together at the packaging plant for maybe 3 months before he got transferred to the night shift. Seemed like a nice enough guy." Carlos was starting to look worried now. "Why? Is there a problem?" Rico glanced around the yard, taking a quick count of all the adults and children present. Everyone here was family or close family friends, people he had known for years. everyone except Eduardo Silva, who had apparently vanished. "I'm sure it's nothing," Rico lied smoothly. "Max is just being weird today. Maybe he's not feeling well." But even as he spoke, Max suddenly stood up and took several steps closer to the gift table. His nose was working furiously now, and Rico could see the dog's nostrils flaring as he drew in air. Max circled the table once more, but this time his circuit was tighter, more focused. He paused at 3 different gifts, sniffing each one carefully before returning to his original position in front of the unicorn bag. "Okay, mija, make a wish," Maria announced, striking a match to light the 5 pink candles on Luna's cake. Luna closed her eyes tight and scrunched up her whole face in concentration. Rico found himself holding his breath, watching her innocent joy and feeling sick with the knowledge that something was terribly wrong. When she opened her eyes and saw everyone watching her expectantly, she beamed. "I wished that Max could stay with us forever and ever," she announced proudly. "Luna, you're not supposed to tell your wish or it won't come true," her cousin Miguel teased. "That's okay," Luna replied seriously. "Some wishes are too important to keep secret." As if responding to his name, Max suddenly went completely rigid. His ears shot forward, his tail went straight and still, and his entire body seemed to vibrate with tension. This was the pose Rico had seen hundreds of times. Max had locked onto something specific, something dangerous. "Happy birthday to you!" the adults began singing, but Rico barely heard them. All of his attention was focused on his partner, who was now exhibiting every sign of a positive alert on controlled substances. The singing continued, but Rico was already moving. Years of training and instinct took over as he approached Max slowly, carefully. The dog's eyes flicked to Rico briefly, then back to the gift bag. In that quick glance, Rico saw confirmation of everything he feared. Max had found drugs. "Happy birthday, dear Luna," the voices continued, but they seemed to be coming from very far away. Rico knelt down beside Max and placed a gentle hand on the dog's back. The muscles beneath his fingers were coiled like steel springs. "Good boy," Rico whispered. "What did you find, partner?" Max's response was immediate. He broke from his rigid alert position and moved directly to the unicorn gift bag, placing his nose against it and giving Rico the clearest signal possible. A focused, intense stare, followed by a gentle paw placed on the bag. The singing stopped abruptly as everyone turned to see what was happening. "Rico? What's wrong?" Maria asked, the lit match still in her hand, forgotten. Rico's mind raced. He was no longer a police officer. He had no legal authority to search anyone's property. But he also couldn't ignore what Max was telling him, especially not at his niece's birthday party with 9 children present. "Luna, sweetheart, why don't you blow out your candles now?" Rico said, forcing his voice to remain calm. "But they're not done singing," Luna protested. "It's okay, mija, we can finish the song. After." Luna shrugged and took a deep breath, puffing out her cheeks like a little chipmunk. She blew hard, sending all 5 candles flickering and then going out in small wisps of smoke. Everyone clapped, but the mood had shifted. People were starting to notice Rico's strange behavior and Max's intense focus on the gift table. "Rico," Carlos said quietly, moving closer to his brother-in-law, "what's going on?" Rico looked around at all the faces watching him. His family, his friends, children who should be laughing and playing, instead of sensing the adult tension that was rapidly filling the air. He thought about all the times he had trusted Max's instincts, all the times that trust had potentially saved lives. "I need to make a phone call," Rico said finally. "A phone call? Now?" Maria looked confused and a little hurt. "It's Luna's birthday, Rico. Can it wait?" "No," Rico replied, his voice steady but firm. "I don't think it can." He pulled out his cell phone and stepped away from the group, but not so far that he couldn't keep an eye on Max and the gift table. His fingers found Detective Martinez's number, his old partner from the K9 unit who had always told Rico to call if he ever needed anything. The phone rang 3 times before a familiar voice answered. "Martinez." "Carlos, it's Rico Valdez. I need a favor." "Rico, how's retirement treating you? And how's Max?" "That's actually why I'm calling. We're at my niece's birthday party, and Max is alerting on some presents." There was a pause. "Alerting?" "Rico, Max has been retired for 2 years. I know how this sounds, but you know Max. You know he doesn't give false positives. Another pause, longer this time. Where are you? Rico gave him the address and explained the situation as quickly as possible. Martinez listened without interruption, and Rico could practically hear him thinking through the implications. I can't get a warrant based on a retired dog's alert, Martinez said finally. You know that. I'm not asking for a warrant. I'm asking for advice. What would you do? Honestly, I'd trust Max. That dog saved our asses more times than I can count. Martinez was quiet for a moment. Can you get the owner of the gifts to consent to a search? Rico looked around the yard. Eduardo Silva was still nowhere to be seen. The guy who brought them has disappeared. Disappeared? Left to go to his car and never came back. Shit. Martinez's professional vocabulary was slipping, which told Rico everything he needed to know about how seriously his former partner was taking this situation. Rico, if Max is alerting and the gift giver has vanished, you need to get those kids away from that table, now. Rico felt his stomach drop. You think it's that serious? I think Max has never been wrong, and I think people don't just disappear from children's birthday parties unless they have a very good reason. Martinez paused. I'm sending a unit over. Don't touch anything, but don't let anyone else touch those gifts either. Rico ended the call and turned back toward his family. Luna was standing next to Max now, her small hand resting on his head. The dog's body language had changed again. He was no longer in alert mode, but he was definitely protective, positioning himself between Luna and the gift table. Uncle Rico, Max is acting weird, Luna observed with the straightforward honesty that only 5-year-olds possess. He won't come play with us. Sometimes Max has to work, even when he's retired, Rico explained, kneeling down to Luna's level. He's protecting you. Protecting me from what? Before Rico could answer, Max suddenly stood up and moved away from Luna. But instead of going toward the gift table, he trotted over to the back gate and began sniffing around the area where Eduardo would have parked his car. Rico followed him, and what he saw made his blood run cold. There, scattered in the bushes just outside the gate, were several more gift bags identical to the ones on Luna's present table. They were partially hidden behind some overgrown shrubs, as if someone had hastily shoved them out of sight. Carlos! Rico called out, his voice sharp enough to cut through the confused murmur of adult conversation. Come here, now. Carlos jogged over, followed by Maria and several other adults. When they saw the hidden gift bags, the confusion on their faces turned to alarm. What are those doing there? Maria asked. Rico was already pulling out his phone again. Carlos, call 911. Tell them we need police at this address immediately. Police? Carlos looked shocked. Rico, what's going on? I think Eduardo Silva used Luna's birthday party as a cover for something very illegal, Rico said grimly. And I think those gifts on her table are not what they appear to be. Max had moved to the pile of hidden bags and was exhibiting the same alert behavior he had shown at the gift table. His message was clear. Whatever was in the bags on the table was also in these hidden bags. The sound of sirens in the distance made everyone freeze. Rico had been around law enforcement long enough to recognize that these weren't just patrol cars. The sound pattern indicated multiple units responding to a high-priority call. Everyone stay calm, Rico announced to the group. The police are coming to help us figure this out. But Luna was crying now, scared by the sirens and the sudden tension among all the adults. Max immediately went to her side, pressing his massive body against her legs in comfort. Is Max in trouble? She asked through her tears. No, mija, Rico said gently. Max is a hero. He might have just saved everyone at your party. The first police car pulled up in front of the house just as Rico's phone rang again. It was Martinez. Rico, we ran the name Eduardo Silva through the system. You're not going to like what we found. Tell me. He doesn't work at the packaging plant. He never has. Eduardo Silva is an alias for Marcus Rivera, who's been on our watch list for 6 months. He's suspected of being a mid-level distributor for a drug trafficking operation that's been using kids' events and family gatherings as cover for their drops. Rico felt the world tilt slightly. You're saying Luna's birthday party was targeted? I'm saying Marcus Rivera doesn't go to random children's birthday parties. He either knew someone in your family or your family was specifically chosen for some reason. Martinez paused. Rico, how did Carlos meet this guy? Rico looked over at Carlos, who was trying to comfort his crying daughter while simultaneously explaining to the arriving police officers that he had no idea why they were there. Carlos said he ran into him at the grocery store last week. Said Eduardo seemed excited about coming to a kid's party. Grocery store meeting, eager to attend a stranger's kid's birthday, and then he disappears right before the gifts get opened. Martinez's voice was grim. Rico, this wasn't random. Your family was targeted and we need to figure out why. The implications hit Rico like a physical blow. Someone had deliberately chosen Luna's birthday party as a cover for drug trafficking. Someone had looked at his innocent 5-year-old niece and seen an opportunity to use her joy and celebration to hide their criminal activity. Max seemed to sense Rico's emotional state and moved closer to him, pressing his warm body against Rico's leg in the same comforting gesture he had offered to Luna. Even in retirement, even without his badge and official duties, Max was still protecting the people he loved. The officers are here, Rico told Martinez. What should I tell them? Tell them everything. And Rico, don't let anyone touch those gifts until we can get a proper K9 unit out there to confirm what Max found. As Rico hung up the phone, he looked around at the chaos that Luna's perfect birthday party had become. Police officers were setting up a perimeter around the gift table. Parents were gathering their children and moving them to the far end of the yard. Maria was holding Luna, both of them crying now. But Max sat calmly in the middle of it all, his intelligent eyes tracking every movement, every person, every potential threat. He had done his job, just like he always had. He had protected his family from danger they couldn't even see. Rico knelt down and wrapped his arms around his old partner's neck. "Good boy, Max," he whispered. "You saved the day again." But even as he said it, Rico knew that this was just the beginning. If Marcus Rivera had targeted their family specifically, if Luna's birthday party had been chosen deliberately, then there were still too many unanswered questions. What do you think Eduardo's real plan was? Share your theories in the comments below. The next 20 minutes transformed Luna's backyard from a place of joy into what looked like a crime scene from a television show. Yellow tape fluttered in the afternoon breeze where balloons had hung just an hour earlier. Officers in dark blue uniforms moved with practiced efficiency, photographing every angle of the gift table and the hidden bags behind the gate. Detective Martinez had arrived with the K9 unit, bringing along a young German shepherd named Titan, whose alert behavior confirmed everything that Max had been trying to communicate. Rico stood with his arm around Maria's shoulders, watching as Luna pressed her face against the sliding glass door from inside the house. Her princess dress was wrinkled now, and her tiara sat crooked on her head. But her eyes remained wide with curiosity rather than fear. Children, Rico reflected, were remarkably resilient when adults handled crisis situations with calm authority. The lab results won't be back for several hours, Detective Martinez explained to the assembled adults. But Titan is giving us the same alerts that Max did. We're treating this as an active drug trafficking investigation. Carlos ran his hands through his hair, a gesture Rico recognized from their childhood, whenever his brother-in-law was trying to process something that didn't make sense. I still don't understand how I got mixed up in this. I've never seen Marcus Rivera before in my life, and I definitely never worked with anyone by that name. Officer Patricia Hernandez looked up from her notepad where she had been recording witness statements. "Mr. Garcia, I need you to think carefully about your interaction with this Eduardo Silva character. Where exactly did you meet him?" "At the Supermart on Riverside Drive," Carlos replied immediately. "Last Wednesday, around 6 in the evening. I was picking up groceries after work." "What section of the store?" Carlos closed his eyes, concentrating. "The produce section. I was looking at tomatoes, and he was standing near the peppers. He recognized me first, actually. Said something like, 'Hey, aren't you Carlos from the packaging plant?' Detective Martinez and Officer Hernandez exchanged a look that Rico didn't like. "Carlos," Martinez said carefully, "you mentioned earlier that you worked with Eduardo for about 3 months before he transferred to the night shift. What was his job?" "Quality control, same as me. We worked the same line, checking packages before they went out for delivery." Carlos paused, his face growing pale. "Oh God, you don't think he was using the plant for drug trafficking, do you? We're going to need a complete list of everyone who worked that line during the time you knew Eduardo," Officer Hernandez said. "And we'll need to contact your supervisor to discuss any packages that might have been flagged for irregularities." Rico felt a chill run down his spine as the implications became clear. If Marcus Rivera had been using the packaging plant as a cover for drug trafficking, then Carlos wasn't just an innocent victim who happened to run into the wrong person at the grocery store. He was potentially a witness to a major criminal operation. The sound of Max barking sharply cut through the adults' conversation. Rico spun around to see his partner, standing rigid at the far corner of the yard, focused on something beyond the fence that separated the Garcia property from the empty lot next door. "What is it, boy?" Rico called out. But Max didn't break his concentration. Detective Martinez was already moving toward the fence, his hand instinctively moving to his weapon. "Everyone stay back," he ordered. Through the chain-link fence, Rico could see a dark blue sedan parked behind a cluster of mesquite trees that provided just enough cover to hide a car from the street view. The windows were tinted, making it impossible to see inside, but something about the vehicle's positioning suggested it had been there for a while. "Hernandez, call for backup," Martinez ordered quietly, "and get someone to run the plates on that sedan." Max was exhibiting the same alert behavior he had shown with the gift bags, but his body language suggested something more immediate, more present. This wasn't the scent of hidden drugs. This was the behavior Rico had seen when Max detected a person trying to hide from law enforcement. "Is someone watching us?" Maria whispered, instinctively moving closer to the sliding door where Luna waited inside. Before anyone could answer, the sedan's engine roared to life. Gravel sprayed as the car lurched forward, tires spinning as the driver attempted to navigate the rough terrain of the empty lot. But in his haste, the driver had made a crucial mistake. He had positioned his car behind the trees with only one way out, and that exit required driving directly past the Garcia house, where 3 police cars were now parked. "All units, we have a dark blue sedan fleeing the scene." Detective Martinez spoke rapidly into his radio. "License plate." He squinted as the car bounced across the uneven ground. "Charlie 759 Adam Frank David." Rico watched the pursuit unfold with a mixture of professional interest and personal fear. The sedan reached the street and turned hard to the right, but 2 patrol cars were already responding to Martinez's call. The driver managed to make it 3 blocks before spike strips deployed across his path brought the chase to an abrupt end. "They got him," Martinez announced, listening to updates through his radio earpiece. "Marcus Rivera, a.k.a. Eduardo Silva, is in custody." A cheer went up from some of the adults, but Rico felt no relief. If anything, seeing Rivera's desperate attempt to flee raised more questions than it answered. Why had he stayed to watch the birthday party after planting the drugs? What had he been waiting for? "Detective Martinez," Officer Hernandez called out from the gift table where she had been working with the evidence technician. "You need to see this." The group moved carefully toward the table, maintaining the distance that the investigators had requested. The technician, a young woman whose badge, but identified her as Crime Scene Specialist Lopez, was holding up one of the toys from the unicorn gift bag, a plush purple dragon that had been carefully opened along its seam. "The stuffing has been removed and replaced," Specialist Lopez explained, showing them the inside of the toy. "But instead of drugs, look at this." She held up a small electronic device, no bigger than a thumb drive, with tiny flashing lights and what appeared to be a miniature antenna. "What is that?" Carlos asked. "GPS tracker," Detective Martinez replied grimly. "Long-range commercial grade, the kind that drug trafficking organizations use to monitor their shipments." Rico felt the pieces of the puzzle clicking into place in his mind, and he didn't like the picture they were forming. "The drugs were never supposed to stay at the party," he said slowly. "Rivera was using Luna's birthday as a distribution point. Someone else was supposed to pick up these gifts and take them somewhere else." "That's exactly right," Martinez confirmed. "And that GPS tracker would have allowed the organization to monitor the location of their product at all times." Maria sank down into one of the folding chairs, her face pale. "You're saying that someone was going to come to my daughter's birthday party and take her presents?" "Not someone random," Rico said, his law enforcement training helping him work through the criminal logic. "Someone who was already invited to the party, someone who wouldn't attract attention by leaving with gifts." The implications hung in the air like smoke from Luna's extinguished birthday candles. Everyone at the party had been family and close friends, people Maria and Carlos had known for years. But someone among that trusted group was supposed to be Rivera's accomplice. Detective Martinez was thinking along the same lines. "I need a complete guest list," he told Maria, Everyone who was invited, everyone who showed up, and anyone who left early. As Maria began reciting names, Rico found his attention drawn back to Max, who had abandoned his post by the fence and was now sniffing around the chairs where the adults had been sitting. His partner's nose was working again, but this was different from his drug detection behavior. This was Max in tracking mode, following a scent trail. Max moved methodically from chair to chair, pausing longest at 2 specific spots. When he finished his circuit, he sat down in front of one particular chair and looked directly at Rico, with an expression that his former handler knew well. "Whose chair was that?" Rico asked quietly. Maria followed his gaze and her face went white. That's where Carmen was sitting. Carmen and little Diego. Carmen Morales, Luna's godmother, and Maria's oldest friend. Carmen, who had offered to help clean up after the party. Carmen, who would have had a perfectly legitimate reason to take some of the leftover gifts home with her. "Where is Carmen now?" Detective Martinez asked. "She left about 10 minutes. "Before you arrived," Carlos replied. "Said Diego was getting cranky and needed his nap." Martinez was already reaching for his radio. "We need to locate Carmen Morales immediately. She may be in possession of controlled substances and could be in danger." But Rico was looking at Max, whose body language was telling a different story. His partner wasn't exhibiting concern or urgency. Max looked satisfied, like a job well done, which meant that whatever scent he had been tracking, it hadn't left the property with Carmen. "Martinez, wait," Rico said. "Max is telling us something else." "What do you mean?" Rico knelt down beside his partner and followed the dog's gaze. Max was looking at the gift table, but not at the remaining wrapped presents. He was staring at something underneath the table, something that had been obscured by the tablecloth and the crowd of investigating officers. "There," Rico pointed. "Something under the table." Specialist Lopez carefully lifted the edge of the tablecloth and peered underneath. Her sharp intake of breath told Rico that Max had found something significant. "Detective, there's a backpack under here. It wasn't on our initial sweep because it was pushed all the way back against the table legs." She carefully extracted a black canvas backpack that looked like something a college student might carry. It was unzipped and appeared to have been hastily abandoned. "That's not ours," Maria said immediately. "I've never seen that backpack before." Martinez pulled on latex gloves before examining the bag's contents. Inside were dozens of small plastic bags, each containing what appeared to be pills, a notebook filled with handwritten names and addresses, and a cell phone that was buzzing with incoming text messages. "This is Rivera's operation manual," Martinez said, flipping through the notebook. "Names, delivery schedules, payment records." He looked up at the group. "Your daughter's birthday party was just one stop on a much bigger route." Rico read some of the text messages over Martinez's shoulder. They were increasingly frantic. "Where are you?" "Package not delivered." "Boss is asking questions." "Call me now." Rivera dropped his backpack when he ran, Rico realized. He was probably supposed to collect it after the pickup happened, but when the police showed up, he panicked and fled without it. The final piece of the puzzle came when Martinez reached the last page of the notebook. There, written in Rivera's handwriting, was a detailed plan that made Rico's blood run cold. Birthday party, Garcia family, target, Carlos Garcia, packaging plant employee, contact established, delivery scheduled for 4:30 p.m. Pickup contact, C. Morales, godmother, trusted family friend. Backup plan. If primary pickup fails, retrieve packages during cleanup phase. GPS trackers active on all packages. Next phase. Expand operation to other family celebrations. Quinceañeras, baptisms, graduation parties. They were using our trust. "Against us," Maria whispered, tears streaming down her face. "They were turning our family celebrations into drug trafficking operations." Detective Martinez closed the notebook and looked around at the assembled family members. This operation was bigger than just Luna's birthday party. Rivera's organization was systematically targeting family celebrations throughout the city, using people's natural trust and love for each other to hide their criminal activity. Rico felt a surge of anger unlike anything he had experienced since his police days. These criminals hadn't just threatened his family's safety, they had tried to corrupt Luna's innocence, to turn her joy and celebration into a cover for their poison. But as he looked down at Max, who was now lying peacefully at Luna's feet as she pressed her face against the glass door, Rico felt something else: profound gratitude. His retired partner, who could have spent his golden years sleeping in the sun and chasing tennis balls, had instead chosen to protect the people he loved one more time. The good news, Martinez continued, is that with Rivera's notebook and this backpack, we can probably dismantle this entire operation. The bad news is that Carmen Morales is either an innocent victim who's in possession of dangerous drugs without knowing it, or she's a willing accomplice to a major trafficking ring. Carmen has been my best friend for 15 years, Maria said firmly. She would never knowingly put Luna in danger. Then we need to find her quickly, Martinez replied, before Rivera's organization realizes their plan has failed and decides to take more direct action to recover their product. As if summoned by his words, Martinez's radio crackled with an urgent message. Detective Martinez, we have a situation at 1247 Oak Street. Carmen Morales is requesting immediate police assistance. She says someone is trying to break into her house, and she thinks it has something to do with the birthday party. The address was Carmen's house, less than 2 miles from the Garcia home. Someone from Rivera's organization had tracked her down, probably using the GPS signal from whatever gifts she had inadvertently taken home with her. All units respond to 1247 Oak Street, Martinez commanded into his radio. We have a potential home invasion in progress related to our drug trafficking investigation. Rico looked at Max, whose ears had perked up at the sound of Martinez's urgent radio traffic. Even in retirement, his partner recognized the signs of a developing crisis. But Carmen wasn't the only one in danger. If Rivera's organization was desperate enough to attempt a home invasion to recover their drugs, they might also be desperate enough to return to the Garcia house to collect the evidence that could destroy their entire operation. What do you think is really happening at Carmen's house right now? The answer came faster than anyone expected. Carmen's panicked voice crackled through Detective Martinez's radio as officers raced toward her address. They're trying to get in through the back door. I can hear them talking about packages and some kind of birthday party. I have my son with me, and I don't know what they want. Rico's hands clenched into fists as he listened to the terror in Carmen's voice. Little Diego was only 3 years old, probably confused and frightened by the chaos surrounding his mother. The thought of that innocent child caught in the middle of a drug trafficking operation made Rico's protective instincts surge. "We're 2 minutes out," Martinez responded into his radio. "Stay on the line and get to the safest room in your house. Do not open any doors." But even as police units converged on Carmen's location, Rico was putting together pieces of information that painted an even more disturbing picture. He pulled Martinez aside, away from the other family members who were already terrified enough. "Martinez, I think this is bigger than we realized," Rico said quietly. "Look at the timing. Rivera plants the drugs at Luna's party. Someone is supposed to pick them up during the celebration. When that doesn't happen, his organization immediately tracks down Carmen's house. That level of coordination suggests serious resources and planning." Martinez nodded grimly. "I've been thinking the same thing. This isn't some street-level operation. The GPS trackers, the systematic targeting of family events, the backup plans, this is organized crime." As if to confirm their worst fears, Martinez's radio erupted with urgent voices from the units responding to Carmen's house. "We have multiple subjects fleeing the scene. At least 3 vehicles involved. They scattered when they saw our units approaching." "Any injuries?" Martinez demanded. "Negative. Mrs. Morales and her son are safe. But, Detective, you need to see what they left behind." 20 minutes later, crime scene specialist Lopez was photographing evidence in Carmen's backyard, while Carmen sat in her living room, clutching 3-year-old Diego and trying to explain to Detective Martinez exactly what had happened. "I brought home 2 gift bags from Luna's party," Carmen explained, her voice still shaking. "I always take some of the leftover presents to give to Diego later. Maria knows I do this, she never minds. I put them in my kitchen and was going to look through them after Diego's nap." "What happened when you got home?" Martinez asked gently. "About an hour after I got here, someone started pounding on my front door. When I looked through the peephole, I saw a man I didn't recognize. He was asking for Eduardo and saying something about birthday gifts. I didn't open the door, but then I heard voices in my backyard." Rico, who had insisted on coming along despite Martinez's protests, listened from the kitchen where he was examining the gift bags that had put Carmen in danger. Max sat beside him, calm now that the immediate threat had passed, but still alert and watchful. "There were 3 of them," Carmen continued. "I could hear them talking while they tried to get in through my back door. They kept mentioning packages and GPS signals and something about their boss being very angry about a missed pickup." "Did you recognize any of the voices?" Martinez asked. Carmen shook her head. "No, but one of them mentioned Luna's party specifically. He said they knew someone from the party had taken their packages, and they were going to check every guest house until they found them." Rico felt his blood run cold. If Rivera's organization was planning to target every family that had been at Luna's birthday party, then Maria, Carlos, Luna, and everyone else who had been there were potentially in danger. "Martinez," Rico called from the kitchen, "you need to see this." The 2 gift bags that Carmen had brought home contained toys identical to the ones found at Luna's party, but when they opened them carefully, they discovered something that made the situation even more complex. Along with the GPS trackers, each toy contained a different type of electronic device, small recording equipment that had been activated remotely. They weren't just tracking the location of their drugs, Rico realized. They were recording conversations. These devices have been collecting audio from wherever they were placed. Martinez examined the tiny recording devices with growing alarm. If these were in toys that children were playing with, they could have recorded private family conversations, personal information, anything that might be useful for targeting future operations. The implications were staggering. Rivera's organization hadn't just been using Luna's birthday party as a drug distribution point. They had been conducting surveillance on the Garcia family and their friends, collecting information that could be used to expand their criminal operations, or to threaten anyone who might interfere with their plans. "We need to get back to the Garcia house," Martinez said urgently. "If they've been conducting surveillance, they know exactly who was at that party and where they live." The drive back to Luna's house felt like the longest 15 minutes of Rico's life. Max sat beside him in the passenger seat, his intelligent eyes scanning the streets for any sign of threat. The dog's presence was reassuring, but Rico couldn't shake the feeling that they were walking into something much bigger and more dangerous than a simple drug bust. When they arrived at the Garcia house, Rico was relieved to see that additional police units had been stationed around the property. But his relief turned to concern when he saw Maria pacing frantically in the backyard while Carlos talked urgently on his cell phone. "What's wrong?" Rico asked immediately. "It's the guest list," Maria replied, tears streaming down her face. "We've been calling everyone who was at Luna's party to warn them about what happened. But Rico, 3 families aren't answering their phones." Martinez joined the conversation, his expression grim. "Which families?" Carlos consulted his phone. "The Rodriguez family, Luna's teacher and her husband, the Santos family from down the street, and Dr. Patricia Vega and her daughter Sofia." "When did they leave the party?" Martinez asked. "Dr. Vega left about 30 minutes before Carmen did," Maria replied. "She said she had to get Sofia home for a medical appointment. The Rodriguez family left right after we called the police. Mrs. Rodriguez said all the sirens were scaring the younger children. And the Santos family." Maria paused, trying to remember. "I think they left when Eduardo first disappeared. Mr. Santos made some comment about not liking the vibe and wanting to get his kids home." Rico felt a chill run down his spine. "Martinez, what if some of these families took gifts home too? What if Rivera's organization is systematically hitting every house where they think their drugs might have ended up?" Before Martinez could respond, his radio crackled with an urgent message that confirmed Rico's worst fears. "All units, we have reports of suspicious activity at multiple residential addresses. 1455 Maple Street, 892 Pine Avenue, and 2107 Cedar Lane. Residents are reporting strangers attempting to gain entry to their homes." Those were the addresses of the 3 families who weren't answering their phones. "This is a coordinated operation," Martinez said grimly. "They're hitting multiple targets simultaneously." Rico looked around at the chaos that Luna's innocent birthday party had become. Police cars, crime scene tape, frightened family members, and his 5-year-old niece watching everything from inside the house with eyes too wide and worried for someone her age. But as he watched, Luna suddenly smiled and pressed her palm against the glass door. On the other side, Max had approached and was touching his nose to her hand through the glass. Even in the middle of this crisis, the bond between the little girl and the retired police dog remained unbroken. "Martinez," Rico said suddenly, "I have an idea, but you're not going to like it. I'm listening." Max found Rivera's operation once. He can do it again. But instead of waiting for them to hit more houses, what if we set a trap? Martinez stared at Rico, as if he had lost his mind. "You want to use your family as bait?" "Not my family," Rico corrected. "Me and Max." Rivera's organization knows their plan failed, but they don't know exactly how much evidence we recovered. What if we put out word that one of the party guests still has some unopened gifts? What if we make it look like there's still a chance for them to recover their drugs and their recording devices? Rico, these people just attempted multiple home invasions. They're desperate and dangerous. "Which is exactly why we need to stop them before they hurt someone," Rico replied firmly. "How many more families are they going to terrorize while we're trying to track them down the traditional way?" As if to emphasize his point, Martinez's radio erupted with another urgent update. "Officer down at 2107 Cedar Lane. We need ambulances at multiple locations. Suspects are armed and extremely dangerous." The words hit Rico like a physical blow. Officer down. Someone had been hurt because Rivera's organization was trying to recover the drugs that Max had detected at Luna's birthday party. Someone was bleeding because criminals had chosen to turn a child's celebration into a cover for their illegal activities. "That's it," Rico said, his voice filled with quiet determination. "We're not waiting for them to hurt more people. Max and I are going to finish this." "Rico, you're retired. You don't have authority to—" "I don't need authority," Rico interrupted. "I need justice, and I have the best drug detection dog in the city, retired or not." Martinez looked at Rico for a long moment, clearly weighing the risks against the potential benefits. Finally, he nodded slowly. "What did you have in mind?" "Rivera's organization is looking for their drugs and their recording equipment. They know some of it is probably still out there, in the hands of party guests who don't even know what they have. What if we let them think they've found it?" Rico outlined his plan quickly. Using Max's reputation and Rivera's own notebook, they could set up a controlled situation where the remaining members of the trafficking organization would think they had located their missing drugs. But instead of finding their product, they would find Rico, Max, and a coordinated police response that would end their operation permanently. "It's risky," Martinez admitted. "But given what we're dealing with, it might be our best option for protecting the other families and stopping these people before they disappear completely." As they finalized the details of their plan, Rico couldn't help but think about the irony of the situation. Luna's birthday party, which was supposed to be about innocence and joy and family love, had instead revealed a criminal organization that preyed on those exact values. But it had also brought out something else. The protective instincts that had made Max such an exceptional police dog, and that now made him determined to shield Luna and her family from any further harm. "There's one more thing," Rico said, as they prepared to put their plan into motion. "When this is over, I want Rivera and everyone in his organization to understand exactly why they failed." "What do you mean?" Rico looked through the sliding glass door at Luna, who was now sitting on the floor with her face pressed against the glass, talking quietly to Max as he lay on the other side. Despite everything that had happened, despite the fear and confusion and chaos, the connection between the little girl and the dog remained pure and unbroken. "They failed because they underestimated the power of family," Rico said simply. "They thought they could use our love for each other against us. Instead, that love is going to be exactly what destroys them." But first, they had to survive what was coming next. Because if Rico's plan worked, Rivera's organization would soon believe they had found their missing drugs. And when they came to collect them, they would find Max waiting. Do you think Rico's plan will work, or is he putting his family in even more danger? The answer came in a way that nobody could have predicted, starting with a conversation that changed everything about what they thought they knew. 2 hours later, Rico sat in an unmarked police van 3 blocks from the Garcia house, watching surveillance monitors while Max lay calmly beside him. The plan they had developed was elegant in its simplicity. Using Rivera's own notebook and the intelligence they had gathered, they had crafted a fake social media post, suggesting that one of Luna's party guests had found weird electronic stuff in some toys and was planning to throw them away the next morning. The post, created using a fake account linked to Dr. Patricia Vega, was designed to make Rivera's organization believe that their missing GPS trackers and recording devices were about to be destroyed, but that there was still time to recover them if they acted quickly. Movement on the north camera, Detective Martinez reported from his position in a second surveillance van. 2 vehicles approaching the target house. Rico felt his pulse quicken, but Max remained completely relaxed. His partner's calm demeanor was reassuring. If there was immediate danger, Max would sense it before any human could. The target house belonged to Rico's neighbor, Mrs. Chen, an elderly widow who had volunteered to help with the operation after learning what had happened at Luna's party. She was currently safe at the police station, but her house had been prepared with enough surveillance equipment to monitor every approach. "They're being cautious," Rico observed, watching as the 2 cars parked several houses away, rather than directly in front of Mrs. Chen's home. Professional-level caution? That tells us we're dealing with experienced criminals, not street-level dealers, Martinez replied. Through his earpiece, Rico could hear updates from the various police units positioned around the neighborhood. Everyone was in place, ready to move when the suspects made their approach to the house where they believed they would find their missing drugs and equipment. But what happened next caught everyone by surprise. Instead of approaching Mrs. Chen's house, the suspects split up. 2 men went toward the front door as expected, but a third person, someone the surveillance teams hadn't initially noticed, was moving toward the Garcia house where Luna and her family were supposed to be, safely inside under police protection. "All units, we have a problem," Rico said urgently into his radio. "Someone is heading toward the real target." Max's head came up. Immediately, his ears pricked forward. Even though he couldn't see what Rico was seeing on the monitors, the dog could sense the sudden tension and urgency in his partner's voice. Through the surveillance feed, Rico watched as a figure in dark clothing scaled the fence into the Garcia's backyard. This person moved with the confidence of someone who had been watching the house for a while, someone who knew exactly where the security cameras were positioned and how to avoid them. "Martinez, this isn't about recovering drugs anymore," Rico realized. "They know we have Rivera's notebook. They know we've compromised their entire operation. This is about eliminating witnesses." The implications hit both men at the same time. While they had been setting up an elaborate trap to catch drug dealers, Rivera's organization had been planning something much more sinister, silencing the people who could testify against them. "All units, abort the drug sting," Martinez commanded. "We have an active threat at the Garcia residence. Move in now." But even as police cars raced toward Luna's house, Rico knew they might not arrive in time. The figure in dark clothing was already at the back door, working on the lock with tools that suggested professional training. "Max, we're going," Rico said, reaching for the van door. "Rico, wait for backup," Martinez urged. "There is no time," Rico replied. "That's my family in there." He opened the van door, and Max bounded out beside him, instantly alert and ready for action. Together, they moved through the darkness toward the Garcia house, using every bit of cover available to approach without being detected. As they got closer, Rico could see that the intruder had successfully opened the back door and was inside the house. Through the windows, he could see the warm glow of lights in the living room, where Maria, Carlos, and Luna were supposed to be watching television under police protection. But where were the officers who were supposed to be guarding the house? Rico found the answer when he discovered Officer Thompson unconscious behind a large bush near the front door, a small dart protruding from his neck. The officer was breathing, but completely unresponsive, drugged, not killed. That distinction told Rico something important about their adversary. This was someone who was trying to avoid creating additional charges for assaulting a police officer. Max sniffed at Officer Thompson briefly, then looked up at Rico with an expression that conveyed urgent information. His partner had detected something, a scent that was familiar but wrong in this context. Using hand signals from their police days, Rico directed Max to circle the house and identify all possible entry and exit points. The dog moved with the silent efficiency of his training, mapping the tactical situation with senses that no human could match. When Max returned to Rico's position, his body language conveyed a complex message. There was one intruder inside the side. House, but there were also scents suggesting that this person had been here before, recently and repeatedly. Someone had been conducting surveillance on the Garcia family for longer than anyone had realized. Rico approached the back door carefully, his retired police instincts taking over despite years away from active duty. Through the glass, he could see into the kitchen, where Luna's birthday cake still sat on the counter, a surreal reminder of how quickly their peaceful celebration had turned into something dark and dangerous. He could hear voices from the living room, Carlos speaking in the calm, measured tone of someone trying to de-escalate a dangerous situation. "Look, I don't know what you want," Carlos was saying. "We already gave the police everything from the party. There's nothing else here." "You're lying," replied a woman's voice, crisp and professional. "Our intelligence indicates that additional packages were removed from the party before law enforcement arrived. Those packages contain property belonging to my employers, and they want it back." Rico felt his blood run cold. The voice was familiar, but he couldn't immediately place it. More importantly, the speaker had referred to employers in a way that suggested this was more than just drug trafficking. This was organized crime operating at a level far beyond anything Rivera's notebook had indicated. "Please," Maria's voice was shaking but strong. "Our daughter is sleeping upstairs. Whatever you're looking for, just take it and leave. Don't hurt my family." "Mrs. Garcia, I have no intention of hurting anyone, provided you cooperate fully. But I need you to understand that my employers have invested considerable time and resources in establishing a distribution network that your family has now compromised. That investment needs to be protected." Rico moved closer to the sliding glass door that led into the living room. Through a gap in the curtains, he could see the scene inside, and what he saw made his heart race with fear and anger. A woman in her 30s, professionally dressed and carrying herself with the confidence of someone accustomed to being in control, stood in the center of the room. She held a small device in one hand, probably a signal detector designed to locate the GPS trackers and recording equipment that Rivera had hidden in the toys. But what made Rico's blood boil was the sight of Luna, still in her wrinkled princess dress, standing between the intruder and her parents with the fearless defiance that only a 5-year-old could possess. "You're not supposed to be in our house," Luna announced with the absolute certainty of childhood. "This is my birthday, and you're being very rude." The intruder looked down at Luna with what might have been amusement. "You're right, Luna, I am being rude, but sometimes adults have to do rude things to solve problems." "My Uncle Rico says that's not true," Luna replied firmly. "He says there's always a nice way to solve problems if you try hard enough." Rico felt tears prick at his eyes. Even in the face of danger she couldn't possibly understand. His niece was standing up for the values her family had taught her. She was being braver than many adults Rico had known. "Luna, come here," Maria said softly, reaching for her daughter. But Luna shook her head. "No, Mama. This lady needs to learn about being nice to people." The intruder's expression softened slightly. "Luna, I promise I'm not here to hurt anyone. I just need your parents to help me find some things that were left at your birthday party by mistake." "You mean the bad things that Max found?" Luna asked innocently. The intruder went very still. "What do you know about Max finding bad things?" "Max is a police dog," Luna explained proudly. "Even though he's retired, he still protects people. He found the bad things in my presence and saved everyone at my party." Rico could see the intruder's mind working, processing this new information and its implications. If Luna knew about Max's detection of the drugs, then the 5-year-old was potentially a witness who could provide testimony that would be devastating to the criminal organization. "Luna," the intruder said carefully, "can you tell me exactly what Max found?" Before Luna could answer, Rico made his decision. He couldn't wait for backup, couldn't risk this conversation continuing, couldn't allow this criminal to interrogate his 5-year-old niece about evidence in a drug trafficking case. He signaled to Max, and together they moved toward the sliding door. But what happened next caught Rico completely off guard. As he reached for the door handle, Max suddenly stopped and looked back toward the street with an expression of intense alertness. Following his partner's gaze, Rico saw multiple vehicles approaching the house, but these weren't police cars. These were the same type of dark sedans that had fled from Carmen's house earlier. The woman inside wasn't working alone. She was the advance scout for a much larger operation. and Rico and Max were about to be outnumbered by professional criminals who had come prepared for war. "All units, we have multiple suspects approaching the Garcia residence," Rico spoke urgently into his radio. "I repeat, multiple armed suspects approaching. We need immediate backup." But even as he called for help, Rico knew that backup might not arrive in time. He and Max were about to face the most dangerous situation of their partnership, retired or not. Through the window, he could see Luna still standing defiantly in front of her parents, still believing that the power of being nice and doing the right thing would somehow protect her family from the evil that had invaded their home. Rico prayed that she was right. But as the dark sedans pulled up in front of the house and men with weapons began stepping out, he prepared for the possibility that tonight would require more than niceness to keep his family safe. Max pressed, against his leg, solid and reassuring, and ready for whatever came next. Together, they had faced dangerous criminals before. Together, they would do it again. But this time, it wasn't just about law enforcement or justice or protecting the innocent. This time, it was about protecting Luna. The woman inside was still talking to his niece, still pretending to be reasonable while armed criminals surrounded the house. Soon she would realize that her employers had arrived, and this conversation would take a very different turn. Rico checked his service weapon, a habit from his police days that he had never lost, and prepared to do whatever was necessary to protect the people he loved. Through the window, Luna was still talking, still being brave, still believing in the power of goodness to overcome evil. For her sake, Rico hoped she was right. But just in case she wasn't, he and Max would be ready. What do you think will happen when those armed men reach the front door? Share your predictions in the comments and tell us who you think the mysterious woman really is. Don't forget to like this story. Share it with friends who love incredible true tales. Subscribe for more amazing stories. And let us know in the comments where you're listening from around the world.